A Very Merry Match by Melinda Curtis. Prologue. I want to match Darcy Harper. Edith, chorused the three mature females who made up the Sunshine Valley Widows Club board. Why are you upset? Edith Archer demanded, trying to sit as tall as she could at the card table, height not being one of her assets. I thought we were here to choose someone who needs help falling in love. She'd overheard her three friends at a Widows Club Thanksgiving potluck yesterday discussing their intent to give Cupid a helping hand this holiday season. Since it sounded like something she'd be interested in, Edith had dropped by because Mims, Bitsy, and Clarice often forgot to extend an invitation her way. You can't choose Darcy. Bitsy's head shook so hard her black velvet hair bow slid lower on her bobbed blonde hair. For one thing, she's married. And if you must know, we give priority to matching widows and widowers. That's a rule. Clarice shouted, having left her hearing aids at home. She shuffled a deck of cards. Like having to be on the Widows Club board to participate in the matchmaking. I come to all the board meetings. Edith shifted in her seat, wishing Mims had cushioned folding chairs. Therefore, I'm on the board. There was another uproar. Clarice's cards spewed like a fountain across the table. Bitsy's bow fell to the floor. Mims stared up at her husband's tall, hand-carved gun case, mouth moving as if having a silent conversation with Ham. Edith sat patiently through it all. If possession was 9/10 of the law, then attendance should count the same. When her husband died last winter, she'd needed an anchor. The Widows Club board had helped keep her grounded. Yes, they sometimes overlooked her, but their hearts were in the right place. And she'd been tickled to learn they had a secret purpose and a code name, the Sunshine Valley Matchmakers Club. They were a club, Sunshine Valley's version of the secret society in the Da Vinci Code. Only they operated for good, not greed. Edith, Mims said in her firm voice, pausing to chew off more of her lipstick as she tried to fluff her white, short, flat curls. Some may question Darcy's choice in husband. Darcy was in her early 20s and had married Judge Harper, who was pushing 80. But that's not why we're here. You can't mean to let Edith have a vote. Bitsy stopped trying to fix her hair bow. She was always perfectly coiffed, even if stuck in 80s fashion trends. Leg warmers had never been Edith's thing. But with Bitsy's words, Edith experienced a rare moment of gut-shaking doubt that things wouldn't go the way she wanted them to. She stared at Mims pleadingly through eyes filling with unexpected tears. Listen closely, Edith. Clarice used her outdoor voice and pointed at Mims and her neon orange camouflage sweatshirt. President. She pointed at Bitsy and her red, silk-covered, linebacker shoulder pads. Treasurer. She jabbed a thumb at her pink and yellow paisley blouse. Secretary. And then she faced Edith. Which means you're Vice President, Edith interrupted with a relieved laugh. Thank heavens. She'd found a slot to fill. Boards always have a vice president. A second in command. Edith's chest swelled with importance. Her pronouncement was met with silence. They were probably all stunned they hadn't seen this before. I vote we table the issue of vice presidency to a later date, Mims mumbled. Second. Bitsy went back to her hair bow and then shouted at Clarice. Deal the cards. We'll figure things out later. Clarice frowned. As a flower child, she'd seen a lot of sun in her day, and when she frowned, her thin face thickened with sun-spotted wrinkles. There are rules. Mims waved her hand the way she did with the board when Edith got her way. Frowning, Clarice settled her long gray braids over her shoulders. You have to win a game of poker before you can propose a name. Preferably the name of a widow or widower, Bitsy said, hair bow in place. Who's been widowed at least a year, Mims added, gaze drifting back to the locked case of hunting rifles. That could almost be me. Suddenly, Edith had mixed feelings about the game. She'd practically earned a coveted seat on the board. What if the winner of the poker game chose to match her? We tend to focus on the younger widows, Mims explained. Oh. Edith blew out a relieved breath. We could make an exception, Bitsy murmured. With a snort, Clarice began to deal. Ante up. Each of the widows had 10 pennies in front of them. Edith laid 2 pennies in the middle of the card table. Clink clink. 1, 2. Buckle my shoe. The mood in the room was too serious for her liking. After a moment's hesitation, Mims slid out 2 pennies. 3, 4. Shut the door. Edith beamed. Clarice stopped dealing cards to stare at Mims and Bitsy. This is a bad idea. You're right, Edith said, grateful the conversation had turned. Gambling is never to be condoned. My grandson-in-law did a good bit of it before he died. How is Mary Margaret doing? Bitsy sorted her cards. The first holidays are always tough. Mims directed her soft words toward Edith, who nodded, thinking about the empty side of her own bed instead of her granddaughter's. I'm lucky to have such good family and friends around, especially the Widows Club. Edith turned a warm smile toward Bitsy. Did you forget to ante up? Bitsy contributed her 2 cents. Widows roll with the punches. 5, 6. Pick up sticks, Edith sing-songed. I'm afraid of what comes next. Clarice finished dealing. She set the deck of cards aside and tossed her 2 pennies on the pile. 7, 8. Lay them straight. Edith beamed at her friends. And then she beamed at her cards, splaying them on the table. 4 queens. Who can beat me? The original 3 board members groaned. That's not the way poker is played. Mims exhaled, long and slow. This isn't going to work. Agreed. Bitsy crossed her arms. Yap. Can't play without protocol. Clarice stood, reaching for her wooden walking stick. She'd been using it since her double knee replacement last year. I have to go. Bitsy got to her feet, adjusting her listing shoulder pads. I forgot I have a thing. Mims had no excuse to leave since they were at her house. She stood anyway. I win? Edith happily raked in her coins. She should have known she'd prevail. Edith had always been lucky. I thought we'd play until someone had all the pennies. But if not, I'll choose Mary Margaret. Because the anniversary of her granddaughter's husband's death was Christmas. You can't choose, Clarice said in her loud voice. It goes against the rules. And being secretary, Clarice was a stickler for the group's rules. All right. Then who will we match? Edith looked at each of the board in turn, hoping they wouldn't point to her. I thought Mary Margaret was the perfect choice. The rest of the board fell silent. And in that dead space, Edith realized it didn't matter who won their 40-cent game of poker. They'd all had Mary Margaret on their mind.